Thank you so much for making time and for joining us on The Bottom Line KE. We miss your presence physically here in studio, Joy.
Next time, God willing.
Next time, God willing. Now, as a legal person, I don't know how many hours should I report a missing person case. This can sound like a lighter note, but I think my friend Javas Bigambo is missing, literally in action, here on set. Not the first time, and so I'm a worried friend. And anybody who's out there who has seen Javas Bigambo, kindly tell him that Elder Anango is looking for him. We've been trying to get in touch with each other for the last 2 weeks, but I don't know if he's very, very okay, because we had planned for him to be on set tonight with you, Joy, Brenda, and of course to help us understand from a very political and governance perspective the issue to do with succession politics. So Joy, show must go on one more time. You saved the day, and we are happy to have you right here on set. A lot has happened, Joy. Let's just kickstart this conversation. A lot has happened. Today we have seen a new declaration. A new entrant, probably might not be so new because he's wanted this so badly. We saw him looking for it under the ODM banner. It wasn't coming through, and now he is the official presidential flag bearer for Safina. This is succession. Everybody seemingly wants to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta. I'm talking about Jimmy Wanjigi, who's been declared the presidential candidate for the Safina party. Talk to me a bit about this interest, Joy. Any Kenyan who's a politician or who might not be a politician, what would be interesting them to want to vie for office, for the presidency? A seat that, there are a lot of stones and mud and rotten eggs in terms of bad words and all the good things hated and loved in equal measure. Why would any Kenyan want to vie for presidency? We've seen Jimmy Wanjigi wanting this so badly.
Thank you so much, Anango, for having me tonight. I think there are various reasons why people run for office. One of the most often quoted reasons that I think maybe we could start there, taking it at face value, is that you simply want to serve your country, that you are a patriot. There are things going on in the country that you feel are not going as well as they could, and you feel that you have a contribution that you have to make to the general public. And so you offer yourself as a service so that others can benefit from your selflessness and from your leadership and from your vision for a better society. So that would be the very primary reason why people run for office. Of course, people run for office also as part of their own personal ambition. It's an area of self-actualization. You have been a consummate politician for years. You have grown from strength to strength, and you get to a place where the only place left in your career to go is up. So there's those who think that they can offer service. There are others who want to offer service, but it's also part of self-actualization. Then there is others who are given the push by people who think that they should offer themselves. And so you'll hear them talking about how they have listened to the call, they've heeded the call, people have asked them to do this for them. And so in listening to others, and in Kenya most commonly referred to as listening to the ground, in listening to the ground, they offer themselves as leadership. Somebody like Jimmy Wanjigi, Ruben Kigame, David Maore, Professor Wajakoya, some of those are a little bit maverick. Sometimes the running is in trying to make a point. So they are not running thinking that they're going to win, but they run to take a stand. Stand. So you find these ones a little bit outside the normal circuit, because as far as they're concerned, any Kenyan should be able to do this. And they feel that by doing it, even if they do not ascend to the presidency, they're able to make their voice heard regarding people whose voices are not typically heard amongst those who have traditionally offered themselves. So there are some who run on principle. Right. I think that's where I would start.
Right. Amazing deliberations right there, submissions. But Joy, there are those who, like you just said, they're running, but they know they will not make it to even top 5 or 10, depending on the people who are running. But then I want to understand the aspect of the freedom to run for any political seat, as long as you meet the threshold in terms of the age, qualifications and all that. But should there be a way whereby people are just told, you know, this is a waste of time, it's going to be a waste of resources, and probably there's a criteria, probably through opinion polls or whichever way. Talk to me about this, because there was a time an official of a leading political party did mention, and this was actually taken differently by various people. I'm talking about Edwin Sifuna, the SG of ODM. He did mention, I mean, we need to be able to tell certain people the truth, that they will not go far in their missions. The vying should be left to a specific people, so that people are able to just focus and choose from these ones that are there. From where you sit, would this be helpful? Ama, you know, kuna wale ambao they say wanazindikiza wengine, or they just want to prove a point or be able to put on their CV, I also ran for the presidency?
I think one thing, Anangwe, that I'll tell you, and I hold this very dear, is the fact that when people are running for public office, it is incumbent upon us as the electorate to see ourselves in the candidates whom we elect. And therefore, if the choice is wide, then there is a high likelihood of you seeing yourself in one of the people who are running for office. And in that way, as a voter, then you're able to vote for yourself in the candidates that you choose. So, for example, if you look at the West, people who are passionate about the environment will be members of what they call the Green Party. Others who are passionate about socialism will be members of Social Democrats or other demography. People who have had political parties for years that have never really ascended to power, but will get the 3 or 4 MPs who keep their aspirations alive. Now, in Kenya, we have this thing where we treat our elections like a football match, where you're playing to win. So you're running to win. And that's why you hear talk about you're not going to go far. As long as you make it to the tip and you have got a vote more than one, as in it's not just your vote for yourself. There were even 200 people who thought that, you know what, maybe you have an idea. Then that means that race was not futile. Those 200 people have told you, you know what, in you I see myself and I think you have a point. And that's a very important thing in a democracy. They say that the majority have their way, but it's just as important for the minority to have their say. So even if people are running, like I said, you may be running and all the polls are not polling you very highly and everything, but you have had a chance to say what you needed to say. And if you manage to convince some Kenyans to support you, then it's a win. I said the only wasted vote is one that sits in the house and does nothing. Others, if you're participating as a patriot in the electoral process, every Kenyan should look at a candidate who speaks to their psyche. And believe you me, even Professor Wajakoya and his claims of 4-day work weeks and bangi for everybody, there are people who resonate with that message very strongly.
Right. And you, as you say, Joy, I mean, there are those who would argue and be able to tell you it's going to be a wasted vote, because at the end of the day, the 200 votes that you will get, or the 200,000 votes, will not be equal to the millions that the winner will be able to get. And so you will not still make it in the government of the day that will be formed by the other person. I mean, most likely you wouldn't. And so people would see this as a wasted vote.
No, but you're assuming that the prize is the presidency. For such a person, the prize could be a national platform to articulate what they think is important. And as long as he has managed to do that and has gotten some Kenyans to agree with him, for him it is still a win. We have to start looking at this in terms of, it's not just, because the overarching principle of democracy is that we give people a chance for their voice to be heard. If all voices are stifled except the voices that are most likely to be successful, there are many Kenyans who would tell you that they go to the polling booth and they wish that there was a choice for none of the above. just to put a tick on the none of the above. Yes, if you think back to about 10 years ago, when Abdu Badida captured our imagination, man talking about when you eat githeri, leave your stomach 3/4 full, you need the other quarter for water and air. You know, people voted for Abdu Badida because, you know what, in him they saw their own common sense approach to life. That is important in a democracy. There has to be room for people who vote for what they think is important. And as true Democrats, we ought to examine and see, is there a way after the election? Is there a way what those people are talking about can enrich the conversation for those who now actually take governments who become successful. So, for example, I use the example of the Green Party in other jurisdictions. You'll find that after the election, they would enter into a coalition or a collaboration agreement. We've seen this in Israel, we've seen this in other countries, where you use the smaller fringe parties and tell them, look, we know that environment is important to you.
Yes.
We will make it mainstream in our leadership. Just give us your 3 MPs to be voting together with us. Is that not a win? Do you still not find your way into government? So some of these smaller, quote unquote, and I use smaller with utmost respect, just in terms of numbers, smaller candidates, actually, because like I said, the one who's a loser is the one who comes up with 1 foot.
Yeah.
But if you manage to convince even 10 Kenyans to think like you do, as far as I'm concerned, it's a win. Because that's a conversation maybe 100 years from now, what you are saying will be the politics of the day. And everybody will be saying, kumbe Joy was ahead of her time. And now that's something that in Kenya we don't seem to appreciate.
We don't seem to appreciate it, Joy. For a fact, what is seen or what is said is that they just want to spoil the votes of a particular region. They want to take us to a runoff. And that is why they're actually insisting on being on a ticket. Joy.
Yeah, let the votes be spoiled, Kwani. That's why we wrote in the books that we are going to have a runoff. We didn't write those things there so that we can avoid having them. We put those things there so that when the conversation is not as clear as we thought, we have a room to clarify what did Kenyans really say. Because if you get to a place where nobody has 50+1, then of necessity, the ones who are going into the runoff have to talk to the others to enrich the conversation, to expand the space, to accommodate them. So you see, still, it's not a loss, because if I force a runoff, then it means whoever makes it into the runoff has to come back to me and ask me, by the way, what was your point? I realized that you got 750,000 votes. I want those 750,000 votes to come my way. What will it take for you to endorse me? And that enriches our conversation, because we suffer the risk of having a single story, where there's only one side that keeps talking over and over again. We've seen, like, for example, when I look at a country like the United States, the 2 major parties that have dominated the US politics for a long time have gotten into a place where the country is polarized within itself, basically because of politics. And I find it affects everything else. Their social policy, their foreign policy, everything now hinges on who gets into power, and everything shifts overnight. The policies shift overnight. Everything turns so drastically. Quite frankly, I'm not sure that that's a very good thing. When I look at the Europeans, I'm like, okay, that's a little bit more inclusive. At the Israelis, where everybody has to work with these small fringes to make sure that everybody comes on board, in my opinion, it actually enriches the conversation. So spoiling or not spoiling, that's why we wrote the Constitution with the possibility of a runoff. So that the first round, everybody makes their say, but we also see who is. So if you're going to a runoff, you make discussions with the ones who you can see are stronger than others.
Right. So it could be the time to be able to test this and see where it takes us. But Joy, talk to me a bit about the thought process, because Kenya today, as we speak, is actually approaching a turning point. One more time, we're going to see a transition from, a regime to another one, depending on who wins. But what we know is that we are looking at a shift of leadership, a shift of governance, because the winner that will be taking over from a mandate that will have ended within its 2 terms. What should be running in the minds of those who are leaving the top office, or probably what do you think is? Because a lot has been said that the current president wants to extend his power through Raila Odinga, and that is why he's actually working on that. Talk to me a bit about the succession dynamics. What would be running in the heads of the incumbent, the one who's going to leave office, in this case, in the Kenyan situation, from where you sit?
We got introduced to a notion during the Kibaki era of something called legacy, where people now don't look at themselves merely in the spectrum of when they're in office. They look up about when I leave office, what will people remember me for? And that has created a certain pressure, I think, when the leaders are exiting office to ensure that they have left enough for people to remember them by. Now, in Kenya today, unfortunately, the things that we're talking about during independence are still disturbing us still today. And so when people are thinking legacy projects, we're still talking about the traditional ujinga, umasikini, and and afya and all those other things. And so I find many projects are designed to sort of leave people with an impact of, at least I sorted out this problem for you. So please remember me in your kingdom. Now, in my opinion, there is a danger in that our leaders sometimes forget that power is transient. It was never designed in a democracy anyway. It was never designed to have one home or one residence. It was always designed to pass on to somebody else. And therefore, sometimes we find our leaders fall into the trap of having too much politics and forgetting that there will come the time to pass the baton. And that's why you find in the second term, there's always the rush to try and find that if you can consolidate the legacy. Now, what is running through the minds of the incumbents right now is sometimes, you find that your best laid plans may not be going as well as you thought they would. And so there is the temptation to try and manage the process so that what you had intended or what you hoped that would become part of your legacy is delivered, is attained. If you're unable to complete what you thought was a legacy project within your time, you want to have the comfort of knowing that whoever's coming after you will not rubbish it, but will at least carry it on. And that's why we see now succession becomes an issue, because you can look and think, you know what, I have got 140 days left. I possibly cannot finish this, but I need to be sure that whoever's coming is going to finish this because this is important to me. The conversation, like I said, has moved away from the understanding that power is transient to thinking about what will people talk about when I'm no longer on the stage. Unfortunately for us, history is one of those things that is written after we are long gone. And therefore, even with our best laid efforts, our best laid plans, we are unable to completely manage what our legacy will look like. But it is that attempt that has left us where we are now with our succession politics, because people are thinking, let's try and finish this as quickly as possible. And what we can't finish, let us be sure that whoever is coming makes a promise that they shall finish this on our behalf. So I think that's where we are right now with the incumbents, and they are planning how to leave office. And it's not just the president. You're thinking the second-term governors who know that they're not coming back. You're thinking the CSs who know that with the new administration, they probably are not coming back to their old jobs. And there's something that they felt that they needed to make a contribution to the nation. So there are very many people building legacy right now and working very frantically to try and entrench and write their names in the sand of time.
Right. Two questions, Joy. I mean, is there anything wrong with that? First of all, for an exiting president to actually say, I would love the next person who's going to come in to continue on with what I've worked on. And then they go ahead to even endorse or to be able to say, I think so-and-so is within the same spirit of thought like I've had. That's question number one. And question number two, is it practical to tell an exiting president that wewe maliza yako, ondoka, leave the rest for the next person who's going to come, and so don't care about what you're leaving behind or what you've been able to achieve, forget about it, your time is up, go home? Those two questions. Probably there's a Kenyan who wants to understand that from your perspective.
I think the answer is a yes and a no. Is there anything wrong in trying to manage your legacy and trying to be sure that whoever comes after you maintains? It's only human for you to build something with so much passion and dedication and to not see it demolished and forgotten or abandoned for the person who's coming after you did not care. It hurts as a human being. That's not something that you're looking forward to. You really want to be sure that you've made a difference, and you really want to be sure that the value that you wanted to extract out of it has been extracted. That is one. But the no part of it is that should not be up to you. If people really appreciate what you have done, they will treasure it and they will carry on. Let's look at our neighbors, for example. George Pombe Magufuli was a beloved president. The rest of us thought he was a complete maverick, but to his people, they loved him. And with his demise came now President Suluhu. And with us, we were looking at her now to see, will she carry on Magufulism, for lack of a better word? And to our surprise, one thing that we have seen is that not only has she managed to carve her own way, but she has also found it within herself to keep for Tanzanians that which they loved and revered for Magufuli. So to her credit, she has managed to keep some of what Magufuli was doing for the country. For example, keeping the country open, but at the same time, she made overtures towards we're opening up the country to the international community, easing up issues about the reaching out to the neighbors. We saw her making a pact or having a discussion with Tundu Lissu. So you can see that she has tried to correct some of what she felt uncomfortable with about Magufuli, but managed to keep some of what people liked in Tanzania about Magufuli. Fast forward to here. If you have been a leader who has done things that people have appreciated, whoever comes after you knows that if they mismanage your legacy projects, it does not augur well for them. And therefore, they're pragmatic, they're politicians. They will be careful to handle those with kid gloves. Now, for you to insist that for some reason, you are the citadel of all wisdom, and it's only your ideas that are good, and anybody else who comes to interfere with the ideas that are left is not a good person, then you fall in error. Because in the off chance that your idea was either outdated or misinformed or based on fraud, coercion, or all these other things, then what recourse do people have? So there is need for us to be careful that even if we're getting somebody else in office, for them to have the freedom to know what parts of the legacy are worth preserving and what part of the legacy can be let go.
Yeah.
But for somebody to want to manage it is only human. And you really can't begrudge them that, because if it was you in that position, and even now in your house, have you ever made improvements to a house and then you move out and you keep hoping that the person who comes will appreciate that thing that you did in the corner and will not demolish it and return the house to the way it used to be? It's the same thing. And so as humans, we have to understand them and forgive them.
Right. And when you talk about succession politics, especially at a time like the way Kenya is going to face it in the way we are in terms of change of government, there's been this particular notion that the electorate is not properly informed on how to choose the wheat from the chaff, because there's this idea or the notion that our politics is heavily influenced by a lot, including propaganda, including voter buying, sometimes rigging. How then do we just sit back as an electorate, as a Kenyan nation, and just sit back and say, you know what, this is just going to be fine with all these dark clouds hanging over our electoral processes? Joy, what should we do? How do we clean up the process to ensure that everybody just sits back and says, you know what, this was a fair game, and we accept everything that just came out?
You know, Kenyans have this thing of serikali's idea, which I think doesn't work very well for us.
Yeah.
Because everything, you hear people talking about, nobody told me, they didn't tell us, nobody came. And I'm thinking to myself, this is something that affects you, affects your sweetheart, affects your children. You think you would ask yourself 2 or 3 questions regarding the situation. So for example, I'll give you what I am trying to do. I am trying to educate myself as to who is standing in the area where I'm going to vote.
Yeah.
I'm trying to examine the candidates a little bit more closely, because in the past, I knew who I was voting for president. I probably knew who I was voting for MP. But some of the other positions, especially MCA, or then would be picky ponky. I would vote for gender, or, you know, I like the photo. It would be based on a purely subjective process. There was no objectivity in the reasoning at all. So I decided that this time round, any candidate who I see has put themselves out and I am able to reach them, I will try and find out what it is that they're trying to sell. Civic responsibility is one of those things. As a responsible citizen, we need to try and get ourselves out of the quagmire. But truth be told, I can do that because I have some level of education and some resources that I can get telephone numbers, I can get access, I can access political parties, maybe and meet some of these people. For the normal, everyday mwananchi, therefore, I, who has taken the time to become a little bit more enlightened, have a responsibility to pass along and pay forward what I have learned. This is something we don't do on a regular basis. I'm in the NGO space. We will write proposals and tell people we are going to do civic education. If you don't get money for it, well, we don't do it as much as we would have done it. Sometimes you find players like the churches or the religious institutions might take time for worship to add a 5-minute segment or craft their sermons around some civic education. But sometimes it's barely enough. I think for us as Kenyans, we also have to come to a point where we have learned from experience. So for example, something like post-election violence. Nobody has to teach Kenyans about post-election violence. We've been through this cycle enough that right now, even the diehard people who are diehard supporters, you ask them, if push comes to shove, will you go in the streets and fight for the right of your candidate to ascend to power? They'll tell you no. We are tired.
Joy, are you sure? Because we've seen the contrary of what you're saying. Even in just a mere by-election, we've seen stones being peddled, on some people because they are on grounds considered as, bedrooms of others and strongholds of others. Have we really learned, Joy? I doubt we have learned.
We have. Right now, if you listen to all of the politicians, they're all speaking the language of peace. We must have peaceful elections. We must have peaceful elections. Why? Because they've realized, you know what? People have ended up in the ICC. The people on the ground, many of them have realized we did tear gas Monday, but when people needed to do a handshake, they didn't look over their shoulder and find out the people who did tear gas Monday, are they following us or not? We had people who in 2007 offered their sons to go and fight, who never came back home. Do you think they're going to give you the other sons that remained? So there are lessons that we have learned by experience. And I'll tell you for a fact. Right now, if somebody decided that they're recruiting a jeshi, it's just this mobilization for political rallies where people are fighting in the rallies and everything. But to get to the level where we got to in 2007, 2008, where we are shutting down the economy because of a political contest, I'm willing to bet good money that Kenyans have turned that corner. And it's not just that. That was about, it was at a time when the Kenyan society was very, very politically tribally fragmented. We still have the tribal fragmentation even now. But we have this generation that has come, this generation Z people, this TikTok generation, who quite frankly would be the ones with the energy to run. Because 2007, 2008, Anangwe and I had the strength to run in the street and carry placards and do whatnot. This is how many years later? I don't have the same energy. I'd be counting on my children to do that. These kids couldn't be bothered. Run in the sun for what adventure? So even the demographic has changed. So there are some of those things where it's a never again. It's sort of turned that corner. But back to your primary question, there is a lot of civic education that has to be done for people to understand exactly what their rights and their responsibilities are. But I thank God because Kenyans also are very curious lot. Like this show of yours, people are writing and they're telling you, we are watching, we're listening. And I'm sure when you're done with the show, there'll be feedback on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. People are engaging, and that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. And I think I want to give a shout out to most of them who are watching. I have Faith Waigwa. Most of them are just watching silently. Debbie Mariru is watching. And of course, Ramona Swaka is saying, watching. It's a good conversation. Let's not end at just that. I would like to hear your questions, your thoughts. Mohammed Nasruddin is watching. And of course, someone is called Signora Zuri is also watching. And I'm glad that we have people who are watching us tonight, but would love to challenge you from wherever you're watching us. Would love to hear your voice. Would love to hear your questions, your concerns. What do you want to ask Joy? And probably what are your thoughts on some of the statements that are being made tonight on the program from where you sit as a honorable Kenyan? Are you ready for this transition? What role are you playing? What would you want to see differently? Are you having enough options to vote? Because there are those who say this is just going to be a continuation. It's the same people that have offered themselves for office. But when they're told we have other alternatives, they tell you that's a waste of time. There's no far that this person is going to go. So engage us, talk to us. We're live on our Facebook page at Lookup TV, on Twitter at Lookup TV. You can tweet us as well at Lookup TV, or tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe. Remember to add the hashtag #TheBottomLineKE. Joy, let's take a sip of water. When we come the conversation forward, the last part or the last installment of the conversation tonight on The Bottom Line KE. So stay with us and we'll see you in just a bit. Stay with us.
The future of money is simple, like unlocking possibilities with a smile. And having the world in the palm of your hand. It's the ability to touch many lives at the same time and turn your dreams into reality. It's forgetting and still remembering. Simple is having everything that you love in one place. From the ticket to your next meal, to your ticket to the next holiday. It's an easy way to ask for a boost when you're low. And keeping track of everything on the go. The future of money is simple, and it's here. Download the new M-Pesa app today.
Want to grow your business? Broadcast your sermon, share birthday wishes, make funeral announcements, produce adverts and documentaries? Then book and advertise with us today by calling us on +254 700 893 542
700-893-542
or email us on sales@luke-up.tv.
On a new busy morning, start your day with positivity and vibrance. Look Up TV is here.
Shida sio katiba.
With the hottest, insightful, trendy, and entertaining breakfast, drifting you from the normal.
Join me, Anki Doris Umbat, for the morning drift. This is the all-new Look Up TV.
Get a chance to wake up as a tourist as you view Mount Kenya every day by buying a plot of land at Wema Gardens, Naru Moru. At only 400 meters off tarmac, this is the right place to build your dream home, cottages or holiday homes. You can also buy this property to give to your children as a special inheritance. Water and electricity are in the vicinity, while neighbors are already building their homes. These plots are specially ready for you with title deeds scheduled to be out in 6 months. Buy a 50 by 100 plot of land at Wema Gardens for only 399,000 Kenya shillings. You can also pay for your plot through our friendly 1-year installments plan.
Like, follow, subscribe, click the notification button. Join the Look Up TV movement now.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for still being with us right here on The Bottom Line KE. My name as always is Eugene Anangwe. You're watching Look Up TV, and of course we're having a conversation around issues to do with the succession politics right here in Kenya. And of course I have a very great guest. She's joining us live virtually, and she's none other than Joy Brenda Midivo Masinde. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for still staying with us, Joy. And the conversation is now on home stretch. We're going to be able to now have a look into some other aspects, some other dynamics when it comes to succession politics and planning. And I want to read your thoughts. Before we went for the break, of course, we've received several comments, which I want to still continue welcoming. If you're watching us, you'd like to send a question, feedback, comments, please go ahead and send them through. We'll be able to sample them in the course of the program. Joy, the planning that is involved, because today, the challenge with our election process, according to several people, I mean, different people look at it differently, is the way we have designed or modeled our elections. You rightly put it earlier on and said it's usually going in to win, not going in to actually put your voice or to have your voice heard. That is contrary to what the others are actually putting out there. And so machinery is always oiled and actually commissioned for that purpose, whatever it is that is needed. And I want to read your thoughts on the aspect of the influence that comes with other elements, including what we've seen today, the opinion polls that people are using to gauge popularity, to sway the direction of where this thing goes. I had a guest here in studio, and that was none other than Miguna. He said he does not believe in whichever opinion polls, regardless of which side it says is actually standing out, even if it is the side that he supports. What do you think is their role? Do you see them, building up or playing any role, specifically from where you said?
Opinion polls are usually important as a campaign tool for the campaign team to gauge how well they're doing in a particular area. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at it from the backside, from the workroom of a political campaign, it's a critical tool. You cannot move forward without commissioning your own honest, independent polls so that you know what is our real strength, what is our real impact. Is this messaging working? Is this branding working? How did we fare in this region? Are we still back? Are we gaining forward? So it's a very important tool to inform the campaigners on how to tweak their strategy to be able to maximize their impact. However, in Kenya, like you correctly said, we have also learned to use opinion polls as a means of tweaking the public opinion in a certain way. So for example, if your candidate is struggling and you feel that people are not feeling the message very clearly, you can commission a poll and sort of cushion your candidate to pick them as having a wider acceptability. Because the Swahilis say, watu huvutia watu. So if you thought somebody was really, really down, and then you see, oh no, actually, they're almost neck to neck, even if you are minded to have dismissed your candidate as going nowhere, you're like, oh, he has actually made some strides, and that sort of helps them to activate the base. Now, should they be believed? Maybe not, because sometimes because of the backstory, it's not as credible. I wish we came to a place where there were some independent, credible pollsters who did independent polls that are not commissioned by anybody and are not on the behest of anybody, so that we can compare and contrast the ones that are being released in the political space right now and the ones that are for true. So there's some people who are in other jurisdictions who run very genuine polls. And so if they tell you a certain person has gained 2 percentage points in the polls, they've literally gained 2 percentage points in the polls. But in Kenya right now, polls are basically for propaganda value. They are not really a gauge or a measure that we can take to the bank, so to speak.
So this is one of the things that you would comfortably, if a politician was to approach you, you'd say, no, I do not believe in the opinion polls, do not actually even think about believing in them. Is this your standpoint?
No. You misunderstand me. For the general public, what is being released to manage our expectations, that's the one you take with a pinch of salt.
Right.
But as a politician, you must commission your own polls.
Yeah.
Those companies that release polls in the newspapers do private polls all the time for the candidates. Yeah. You have to commission your own polls to see whether you're making an impact. You have to have an honest assessment of yourself. Yeah. Then that even affects how you move your campaign forward. So for a politician, opinion polls are a very useful tool that you cannot do without. Only they have to be honest polls so that they don't paint you in a better light. They give you a correct picture. But for members of the public, these things that you see released in the newspaper, and every week they seem to, When you see a poll being released, the first question is who released it, who are they working for? Then those ones are the ones I'm saying. Those ones take with a pinch of salt. But any serious politician will not be doing politics if they do not commission polls in the area where they're running to know what impact they're having on the ground.
Right. There's something interesting happening in our transition politics and succession politics this time round that was quite rare, even if it tried to rear its head before. But this time round, it has really come in a big way, and that is the politics of endorsements. And this time round, there's just endorsement after another, and we've even seen even media spaces just outrightly saying to us, this is our person, and we're going to actually do everything, commit our resources to push this particular person. Talk to me a bit about what you feel about this new way of doing things. It's been happening across other jurisdictions, other nations, but not in Kenya in a big way. But this time round, it seems to matter so much that you've been endorsed, regardless of who. Anangwe has endorsed Joy today, and Joy would be so happy and say, Anangwe has endorsed me. Talk to me a bit about how this is going to change, or what kind of impact do you think it's going to have in who takes over the leadership in August 9?
Endorsements are very important because what it does, it helps you woo a section of the electorate called the undecideds. There are those people who are not too sure, and unless they hear many people saying that way, yes, that way, that's the way you should go, then they're like, oh, then probably I should go that way. So when you're looking for an endorsement, you're not primarily looking to win your own supporters over. You're not primarily looking to win your opponent's succession voting block over. You're looking to woo the ones who are in the valley of decision, to show them that reasonable people think that I'm a good candidate.
Yeah.
So, for example, you're a candidate who has gone through a very difficult campaign period with a lot of mudslinging, and you don't come out smelling of roses. But you get some straight-laced, some upright, well-standing and well-liked individual to say, you know what, I actually think Joy does a good job. It turns the needle for you. Let me just remind you something that happened across the pond in the United States.
Yeah.
Just before the Democratic Party primaries, the race was very close between Senator Obama, then Senator Obama, and Hillary Clinton. And I remember that Hillary Clinton had even said Obama should just go ahead and concede and maybe allow me to give him a space in my campaign.
Yeah.
And it was looking like that was a genuine proposal that was possible. That was a way that they could have a discussion. Until one endorsement moved the needle for Obama. There's somebody who had an interview with Oprah Winfrey and asked her, between Hillary Clinton, who is a woman, and you have been campaigning a lot for women leadership, and Barack Obama, who's a black person like you, who do you feel would make a better president? And she just made one statement. She said, you know what? I feel Barack. That's what she said. I feel Barack. Game over. All the black people who are wondering, by the way, should we trust this other black person like us? Sure, overnight, he became the leading candidate. The rest, as they say, is history. So there are some endorsements that can help a struggling candidate go over the hump. And so endorsements are very important. However, there's some endorsements that can cost you votes.
Yeah.
And I think you have seen this happening even in some of the NDCs. So for example, when there was the great earthquake and Honorable Ruto joined Honorable Mudavadi, there were some of the people in Mudavadi's party left. So there was a fallout. So he got an endorsement from one hand, but he lost some people on the other. So it's a give and take. In Kenya, we are new to this concept because usually everybody fights to the end. Everybody runs the race to the end. But we have seen endorsements as being sort of trade-offs for people stepping away from the race. So I think so far, the example I have in mind is like what happened in Narok, where we saw Madam Soipan and the others deciding, you know what, I'm going to support this candidate for governorship because I think it is his turn, and I'm instead going to try for something else. So such endorsements also work in shifting my support base to your support base, to consolidate it. So instead of going for a bruising nomination battle, you said, you know what, let's keep this house intact, because maybe you have done your polls and you realized if we go to nominations, the fallout may be such that the party loses. So you choose not to. So use endorsement as a means of consolidating the base and ending the acrimony that could pull the party apart. So it's a growing concept in Kenya, but in my opinion, there's room for it. And moving forward, we're going to see more of it. Now, former leaders or exiting leaders, their endorsements are usually very beneficial in trying to give direction, like I said, to undecided. So in Kenya, that is right now not being taken very kindly, but you'll see in other jurisdictions, if a former president endorses you, it actually means a lot, because there's some people who are looking, like now, for example, if Mr. Kibaki decided he's coming out of retirement, everybody keeps saying that they want to go back to the Kibaki era. Imagine if Kibaki came back and said, I think the person who will take you to where I left you is flag. You can imagine that, what that will do for the campaign. So eventually we will get there. But for now, we are still in the trial and error phase of using endorsements as political tools.
Right. Interesting. And would you be advocating for the media to also do a clear-cut line and also do the way the Americans do, the media there? They just say it. We endorse candidate so-and-so as media house. I mean, would you see this turning out well right here in Kenya?
Once we got to the digital space where we don't only have KBC and we started having more players in the field, that is where we were headed. Because now we've gotten to a place where the people in the media are not just doing a public service, they're businessmen, they are brokers, they are power wielders, and it is in their interest to have certain assurances of their business. And so if they do an analysis and they see that somebody else would be more beneficial to my business than you, then you'd find that they're willing to hedge their bets and up the stakes and say, you know what, I've got this I'm giving you in terms of airtime and what this is my contribution to your campaign. And when you're successful, I'm hoping to get this in return from you. So I think moving forward, we will see a lot more media houses, especially the ones that are privately owned and by politically inclined entrepreneurs, being more overt in their support for candidates. And in my opinion, it's part of growth, because right now you've got choice. You know, once upon a time, we only had KBC, and if you had the correct aerial, you had KTN. Now, if you don't like what's going on, you can go and watch Young, Rich and Famous Africans. You know, you don't have to suffer through watching the politics of the day. So because of that value, the availability of choice, we're in a situation where more and more we'll see more media houses becoming more overt in their support of certain principles, see them maybe supporting campaigns that have got environment as their flag. We've seen religious groupings also coming up and having candidates. We've got 2 or 3 people who are running on a religious basis. You might see some Christian stations deciding, you know what, these are our candidates, these are who. So I think this trend will only grow. We're not going back.
Right. And it's a good trend, you believe?
It is. It's part of democracy. We're getting to a place where we can stomach people having an opinion other than us. And if it's not good for our business, we can choose to take our business elsewhere.
Right.
That is growth.
Joy, before I let you go, I'm told we need to also start winding up. But before I let you go, there's this question that I would love to hear from you, from your own analysis, from your governance perspective, legal perspective. Looking at what happened during the Yote Yawezekana era, the Rainbow Coalition era, that actually saw a landslide victory and the beating of the regime, the KANU regime, we saw what happened when Mwai Kibaki took over office and what happened to the incumbent or his predecessor. Today, do you feel that with this succession politics that is going on today, do you probably feel that President Uhuru Kenyatta and everybody else who's rallying behind the vision of the Azimio la Umoja are having sleepless nights, especially when they hear the deputy president's side saying hawa tutawanyorosha saa 2 asubuhi tutakuwa tumemaliza hiyo kazi, tutakuwa tumefunga hiyo chapter. In this succession politics today, do you feel that the president should be having sleepless nights? Do you think they are having sleepless nights? Thinking of how which
No, I don't. I don't think so, because the Azimio side is also very confident. They're running a very formidable campaign. They have a very brilliant strategy. There's some things that they are doing that are not out in the open eye that normal Wananchi may notice, but the overtures that they're making on the ground. So I think the Azimio side is also very confident. So I doubt that they're having sleepless nights because of loss. They may be having sleepless nights because they're thinking up new strategies. So in a contest, that's how you talk. And one thing that I've learned by hanging around politicians for a while is that what they say in rallies and in podiums sometimes is not what happens privately. When they meet at the club and they meet quietly away from the glare of the lights, they're like, leo linitukana sana. Bado. Ama kesho waniite. They themselves, by the way, don't take it as seriously as we do, I think, the rest of us. And so if the rest of Kenyans also learned to take it with a pinch of salt, the Kenyans wouldn't have a sleepless night on behalf of their leading lights. But that is the talk of politics. It's a talk of war, of acrimony, of, But once, we have seen it before, even once there's a transition. Right now, people can be bitter enemies. But when time comes for that oath to be taken, for the sword to be handed over, and for the mantle to pass, at that level, everybody has to hush down. Did we ever see a situation where President Moi would be so subdued as to actually hand over to somebody else? But when the time came, the country became bigger than the man. And I think even for President Kenyatta, there'll come the time when that reckoning arrives, where the person is bigger than the man. If he has to hand over to William Ruto, he'll find the strength to do it. If he has to hand over to Raila Odinga, he will be happy to do it, because that is the nature of transition. Power, like I said, is transient. It doesn't come to stay. It comes to pass. And eventually, in 140 days, there will be a passing of the baton, whichever way. So I'm sure the president, the people who are looking after his mental health and helping him to just stay on top of things, this is a conversation I'm sure he has had with his advisors, with his people, so that he's able to also mentally prepare for whichever eventuality. Because any true politician knows when you're running in an election, there's only two options. You either win or you lose. And both options are up in the air.
Yeah, and Joy, there's been a lot of, some people call it shuttle diplomacy, or trying to talk to the international community. In this succession battle, does it really matter? Because there are those who would argue and say, they won't vote, so why are you going there to actually tell them our problems or what you want to do? Talk to me a bit about how the international community will play a role in this election, considering what the politicians who've managed to go there have been saying, the kind of speeches they've been making.
There's two things that these international trips do. One, it's an opportunity for the candidates to engage with the Kenyans in diaspora. Now, I know this election round, we most likely will not, but where we are headed eventually is that Kenyans who are in good standing in the countries where they are can register to be voters in future. And so we'll have a situation where you don't have to be in the territory for you to vote. Now, having a campaign strategy for Kenyans in diaspora is something every serious politician has to have. So these foreign trips are very good to engage. It's a small vote block for right now, true, and the expense and the discomfort of going all the way may not seem worth it. But that's a constituency you need to start courting, because they have the potential of being excellent for fundraising for the campaign, and they're a basket put. And they have people at home who are within their sphere of influence who they also are able to convince to vote for you. The other angle is what you said. The international community does not have a vote. So why do we go to them? Why do we court them? Now, the international community play a few roles in our electoral process. One, they send observers as part of the UN mission, if it's the African Union. So they form part of those people who come to lend our elections credibility. And therefore, as a candidate, you want to have a rapport with them before they come. You want to show them that, look, I'm an amiable person. I'm willing to work with you. When you come, we will be able to facilitate the process to be free and fair. If the outcome is not is deemed to be not credible, I'm willing to cooperate with you. So they need to make those overtures, and the correct noises have to be made at this time, so that our international partners feel that by engaging or taking an interest in our electoral process is not a waste of time. Secondly, is also to our international partners, it's also an opportunity to give a sneak peek into what foreign policy will look like under certain candidates.
Yeah.
Now, this is important because they do not have a vote, but they have some sway. They can, have discussions, like the opportunity we saw being availed at the Chatham House, for example, where you're able to articulate issues, and they become like an informal presidential debate, where people are able to see the candidate in the presidential light. They stand at the podium, they wear the suit, so it's not the chanting anymore, but this is an opportunity to showcase to the world that, you know what, maybe this is a person who, when they come to the UN General Assembly, we can work with this fellow. So it's part of trying to also showcase themselves as being a presidential, being able to be presidential. But that's some of the reasons why people engage in these overseas trips. But the final thing about engaging in the international community is that in case it goes wrong, you want to have friends and allies who can rally to help you return the calm. And in Kenya, we have seen how this has come to our aid when things have gone wrong and we have had to have, for example, Kofi Annan coming in. He didn't just come in as an African, he came in with the unction of the United Nations. Now, if we were a country that had isolated ourselves from the UN, we were, we were totally isolated from everybody. Nobody would be minded to come and help us. But by having these overtures, in case we need assistance, in case we need help, sometimes the pressure comes to bear from those international organizations and foreign governments. Some of it is not televised. It will be a phone call to say, you know what, we're going to stop supplying this, or we're going to stop supplying that. And it helps to just turn the needle for the country. So there are various reasons why it is important to keep the lines open with our international partners. And those are some of the few that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Perfect. Joy, I want to let you rest a bit. It's been a great conversation, as always, spewing wisdom. Thank you so much. Are you vying? Will you ever vie at any point?
Thank you for having me. I don't know. I'm one of those people who's led by the Holy Spirit. Let's see what the Spirit says. But this time around, I'm definitely not vying. I am active in politics, but I'm definitely not vying. But I'm supporting a few people who are vying. I'm helping them with their campaigns, and I'm happy to do that behind the scenes.
Tell them to remember you, even if it's a nomination position.
Yeah, it is true.
Let me read just
and
real
if
quick.
you're a candidate who needs help, by the way, come and hire us.
Yes. Let me read a few quick.
This is a time where people make money from campaigns. So
It is. So I have David Kabuthi, who says our East is well represented. Thank you so much for making time. We have Remona Swaka, who's been also watching us all through, plus Samuel Mwangi. Paul Karaoke actually says, I have always known that opinion polls are paid up for. They can't be trusted. This is what he says. Nanis Mbabu has been watching us also throughout this time. And of course, Habiba Mimi has also been watching. The Simon Marji has also been there with us. And I want to say thank you also to Margaret Maina Irongo, who's also been watching us on the program. And she says, great conversation, Joy. And I want to say thank you for actually being a part of this conversation. One more time, Joy, thank you for coming through. You've always done that before, and I'm sure that we'll continue having these very important conversations. Kenya is a big country that we cannot actually take for granted. We cannot afford at any point to actually not have this kind of conversation. So asante sana for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
So I'll let you go rest for now, and I wish you a very great week ahead, even as you continue the endeavors. We hope to talk to you soon right here on Look Up TV.
Asante.
Right, of course, this is where we end. Which camera do I look at? This is definitely where we put an end to the bottom line, KE. I want to say thank you for being a part of the conversation. Asante sana to our technical teams. Of course, Paul Karaoke has been there with the rest of the team, those who are here in studio with me, our camera crews, and of course for you actually watching and staying up late after this particular time to be part of this conversation. To our silent viewers, asante sana. Please remember to like our Facebook page. It's Look Up TV. TV. Click the like button. Don't miss out on anything. If you are not a Facebook fan, we are also on Twitter at Lookup TV. Get into the particular joining of our growing community on Twitter, and it's at Lookup TV. Click that particular follow button. We'll follow you back. The only media house that actually does that. Of course, also on YouTube, you can catch all the past shows that you might have wanted to watch, including the interviews, the big conversations that we've had right here on this particular studio right here. If you missed any of them, run onto YouTube, subscribe and click the notification button, that bell right there. It will help you to be able to get notifications whenever we upload or whenever we go live, and so you'll not be able to miss anything. We are a growing community, over 1.6 million viewers in the last 28 days. We say thank you for joining this growing Lookup TV movement. I'm out.
We value your feedback and welcome your complaints about our programming and operations. Feel free to get in touch with us through 0700 893 542 or send us